Zachor, remember. The power and legacy of those who have a voice, those who are part of our history, carry from generation to generation. Zachor, remember. In our Torah this week, Chukat, Miriam, the prophet, dies. And the text says, Miriam dies, she is buried, period. The Israelites are looking for water. Miriam, one sentence, she died, moved on. The people were looking for water. Why say Zachor? Who is Miriam? Miriam is a prophet. She is the one who was the protector of Moses when his mother sent him down the Nile. She was the one dancing with the women, celebrating freedom and joyous nature. And she had the divine gift of finding water in the wilderness. And yet, when she dies, it's just matter of fact and moves on. This is juxtaposed to later in the chapter when Aaron dies, her brother, and the people mourn for 30 days. When I read this, I say, wow, we have, in a way, two prophets. The female is just buried. The male is mourned. So when I say Zachor, remember, I want us to think about sometimes who is included in our history and who is silenced in our history. Miriam was a great prophet. And why I love her as a role model is this. We know that she danced. We know she found water. She is the only biblical woman to not be associated with a husband and children. She is a role model for an independent, strong, single woman. She even stood up and at times challenged Moses. The Bible saw it as a mistake, but I think it's so human. She said, does God only speak through you? No, God speaks through all of us. She challenged authority. So maybe in her time, she didn't stand out for the gifts that she had. But in our times, what a beautiful role model. A woman who wasn't defined by her place in society, but was defined by who she was. And when I think about this, Zachor, the legacy of women leading our community, it marries beautifully with the notion and the awareness that this summer is the 50th anniversary of the first woman rabbi in North America. Sally Presant was ordained 50 years ago. And when I look at how Miriam's treated by our heritage and by the commentators, and how in a way she's been silenced over time, I ask, how far have we come and where have we been held back? Having women rabbis has changed the rabbinate in so many ways. It has brought layers of empathy, creativity, strength, wisdom, life experiences that make us a better and stronger community. And yet, it hasn't been easy for women. If you talk with any of the first early female rabbis, they were seen as the ones to be cute and play with the kids. We know our society has grown over the last 50 years, and yet we know we're not as far as we would like to be. Even look at our history. This congregation would be open to a female rabbi who is the senior rabbi, but we've never had the opportunity, even though over 50% of rabbis today are women. It is common in Reformed congregations to receive phone calls for people to say, I need a rabbi for my parents' funeral, but I need a male rabbi. I just don't like how women sound. I'm not against a woman being a rabbi. I just don't like how they sound. This stuff still happens today. When I was in rabbinical school, we used to work so hard on our sermons, and we used to have small group supervision, and we would sit and talk about our experiences at our student pulpits. This was 15 years ago. And my female colleagues would say, they worked so hard on these sermons, and then afterwards, in the good old days, there was the receiving line where you shook everybody's hand. And most of the congregants would say, oh, you look so pretty this Shabbat. I'm so glad that you're here. Or, those are kind of pointy shoes. I don't think you're wearing enough makeup. So even though we've grown, we're still not where we should be. And when we remember the legacy of Miriam, we are reminded we have grown so far. The world is changing. And yet, even in the greater society, when we look what's happened in politics with the Supreme Court, where we realize that women aren't in control of their bodies in certain states, we know that these freedoms that we've fought for are not constant, and that every woman has had times or work situations or out socially where she might have not felt respected and safe. So I want to acknowledge that as a male rabbi, I have privilege. And my privilege doesn't mean I'm bad in any way. When I was younger, I thought it meant that I needed to stand up for women more. And only with age have I realized that it means stepping back, making room, tzimtzum, to make my ego a little bit smaller so there's room for other voices. In a world today, we really need to listen and hear. And I'm so excited that I have a female colleague that brings so much wisdom and insight. And it's so much fun for me to work with somebody who has the same love that I do, and yet understands Judaism and the world a little differently. And that's what life is about. So I guess for me, I wish the story of Miriam ended, and we were blessed to have such a wonderful prophet. We were blessed to have a singer and a musician, the finder of water, and most important, a role model for what it means to challenge authority when you think it's right. Sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes you do it right. And how devoted was she to our community? Tonight, in that honor, I don't know if you've realized this, but we've chosen all composers who are female. We wanted to continue that legacy because even in our Jewish music, most of the time it's male composers. So I hope a lot of the tunes were familiar to you. If they were a little different, it was because we really wanted to think about this idea of zachor, to remember, and whose legacy has voice. So tonight, we are honoring those generations of women who sang and danced and made Judaism strong.